Okay, hi everybody, my name is Devin, and this is my group members. This is Daniel, Sai, Jackie, and James, and together we are the Health Robots, and today we're presenting to you the process of our podcast, which is on artificial intelligence in healthcare. So once we formed our group, we met the next week in order to brainstorm some ideas for our topic. And we started our brainstorming by going on the Georgia Tech research website and looking at the research projects that professors were doing so far in Georgia Tech. We figured that if we picked a topic that somebody was researching, we would kind of kill two birds in one stone. So we pick a topic and we'd be able to interview the professor who's conducting the research. So some of the things that we were thinking about doing were cancer research, stem cell research, cloning, bioweapons, and bioterrorism. Originally, we kind of were thinking about doing stem cell research, but we collectively all decided we wanted to do something that was kind of more unique and original. And everybody talks about stem cell research and everybody talks about cancer research. So Daniel actually told us a story about how an AI robot was being racist to an individual because it had formed bias. So we were all oh, why don't we try to talk about AI in healthcare, because that's something that nobody ever talks about. So we kind of focus our podcast more around what is artificial intelligence and how it can be implemented in healthcare today. And on top of that, we kind of talked about the ethical side of healthcare, artificial intelligence in healthcare, and whether or not it should be used. So that's our process.
Okay, so we were thinking, we had a bunch of interviewers in mind. Dr. Rosenberger, Robert Rosenberger, he was my engineering ethics teacher, so I was 99% sure he would allow us to interview him, because I know the guy. He was only in a class of 16 kids, so I know the guy. He's very chill, so I knew that he would agree to it immediately. You can kind of see his credentials. He's associate professor of the School of Public Policy and has a PhD. He likes to focus on the ethics of biotechnology, ethics of technology, futuristic technology. So that was perfect for this field, because he's not necessarily an expert in the technology itself, the advancement of the technology, but he's an expert on the ethics that could arise from these different types of things. So we interviewed him.
For the other, we wanted to have two interviewees so we could have more content for our podcast. So the other one, we wanted it to be a technical person. We had a list of professors at the College of Computing here at Georgia Tech. Unfortunately, they didn't respond. This was our most prominent interviewees, Dr. Charles Isbell. He does a lot of research. He specializes in AI, so that's what he works with. Got his PhD at MIT, but we never got an answer, so we ended up having only Dr. Rosenberger.
So those were the questions. We had only those 6 questions to ask him, but obviously, when we recorded the whole thing, it was a 45-minute interview, so we definitely got plenty of content. These were the basis, the original questions we were going to ask, and then he kind of tweaked them because he didn't want to make a certain statement for any of them. For example, the second question said, "Who is held accountable?" He didn't actually mention. He said he wasn't going to tell us who is going to be responsible. That's a definite answer. But he talked about different possibilities, who we can hold responsible, who should have the blame. So it was that. We talked about it. This was in the, in the bottom of my dorm, there's a classroom, and that's where he teaches. So after class, I was there, and Daniel came, and we were interviewing him. So it was relatively quiet and stuff. There was a couple problems with people just randomly coming in and talking, not realizing that we're actually doing a project. So they just come in, talk. There was one girl who asked about an earring or something she lost. And then she's like, "Oh, you guys are doing a project," and she just left. So then, he was totally understanding for even that. He just said, "Okay, let me repeat what I did just so that it's easier for you guys to edit." So he was very cool and chill about that. But that's basically how our interview process went.
And now the podcast itself, what the format we decided. So we thought that if before deciding how we would present our podcast, before that we did the interview, would be a lot easier, because we can't change what we're gonna do, but we can change the interview. We cannot. So first we did the interview. After that we listened to the 45 minutes we had to decide the best topics to talk about. And at first we were thinking of having a debate format with 2 people on each side and 1 mediator. But we thought that adding the interview to that might be problematic, especially now that we have only 1 interviewee. So then we switched to a more classical podcast style with 3 hosts that were me, Devin, and Sai. And we talked about the topic within ourselves. Each one of us kind of had a specific part of the ethics debate we talked about, and we played parts of our interview with Dr. Rosenberger to like give credit to our arguments. And we also added several sessions for reflection based on what we had done, make sure that the audience is always connected. We did have a script because we thought that would be easier so you can remember everything, so the podcast is well structured. But at the same time, we're controlling ourselves so we would be enthusiastic about the topic, not just reading a script, so it would sound more natural. And on the format itself, I think that's it.
So, Jackie and I work on the editing process of the podcast. And before we began this process, we have a discussion of using Audacity or using iMovie. And finally we come up with this plan. So for canceling out the background noise and the disturbance caused by the air or some sound from air conditioner, we use the Audacity to eliminate those
Sound pretty good.
noise. Yeah, and it turns out really good. And for chopping the podcasts of different parts, like splitting those sound check and recombine them, we use iMovie because the iconic feature on the iMovie is really convenient for recombining the different section of the sound check. And when we added the podcast, we add some delay after some major section for purpose, so the audience can easily know like what we're doing. They can have some broad idea about what we are talking about in the podcast. And finally, we are thinking about add some leading music and ending music in certain part of the podcast, so it can be more professional. It can sound like just an NPR podcast.
Yeah, and I want to talk about like the process we edited it. So James and I are responsible for editing the podcasts, and the other group members made the podcast, and they write like super clear which part they want, so it makes our job so much easier. But we decided like we have to add some background music into it after like, oh sorry.
No, you
Okay, so, because like there are some part when like there are some background laughing, which we cannot really do much about it. So I decided like yeah. And the woven part, writing towards the script of the podcast, and they have to come up with some questions when they do the interview, and they email the professors to ask for an interview. And the oral part is the interview with professors, and the podcast itself is the oral part, sorry. Visual part is our like presentation here, so it's visual, but it's a podcast, so it doesn't really have much visual part. And we use any kind of electrical devices to record, and we use software to edit. We use Audacity and iMovie to edit the audio, and we use group chat to communicate with each other. And non-verbal parts is I think like they may use some gestures when they do the interview, or if the professor is not super clear, they may use they may do some like questionable like eye contact to make the professor explains like better. And
the tone of the podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so finally, here's some of our challenges. I'll go through this kind of quickly. We had a late start to our project. We only met one time before we met with Dr. Hoffman, and we only talked about our topics, so we were pretty behind. We hadn't interviewed anybody, and even though we kind of had like an idea of having Dr. Rosenberger, it wasn't definite, so that was a big issue. Another issue with the podcast was the digital recorder. We actually rented one from the library, but when we tried it out, it didn't sound too good. It was kind of grainy and you really couldn't hear our voices, so we just decided to use the iPhone recorder instead, so it was a little bit better. And then like overall, like just time management between all of us, that was kind of an issue too. Like specifically this week when we all had midterms, it was kind of hard to like get everything done with this project. We had to like take time out of our weekend to get things done, but overall, like we finished the project, so it was worth it. So that's our presentation. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
Right.